Welcome back. You're watching World 360 with me, Akanksha Swaroop. Let's move on to the escalating tensions over the Korean Peninsula. The United States has now joined South Korea for a show of strength in an attempt to intimidate North Korea over its ballistic missile tests this week. The South Korean Defense Ministry has confirmed that Pyongyang has fired 4 more short-range ballistic missiles into the sea, and one of its missile tests this week had triggered evacuation warnings in northern Japan and South Korean islands. In retaliation, America has flown a supersonic bomber over its ally South Korea as part of an enormous combined aerial exercise. This involving hundreds of warplanes, and 4 of American bombers have been stationed in Guam since late October. South Korean Defense Minister Lee Jong-sup held a meeting with his American counterpart Lloyd Austin at the Pentagon. They made a joint announcement to extend the Vigilant Storm military exercise indefinitely. And to get in more details, I'm joined in by CNN's Will Ripley, who's joining us live from Seoul. Greetings to you, Will. Now, North and South Korea have both fired missiles landing in waters off each other's coasts for the first time. There's one that landed close to South Korea's water for the first time since the 1945 division. What explains North Korea's intent?
Well, North Korea, predictably, whenever the United States and South Korea hold military drills, they use those drills as an excuse, some might say, to then conduct their own provocative tests. It's something that we've seen time and time again. And this cycle that was last intense some 5 years ago, back in 2017, is now getting close, but still not quite at the level of tensions that we saw back then in what I like to call the fire and fury days with the former U.S. President Donald Trump. But this year, had the former President Trump been in office, one might wonder what would have been happening given the unprecedented barrage of missile tests under Kim Jong-un and a relatively unresponsive and disengaged U.S. President Joe Biden, whose eyes are focused elsewhere on Russia and Ukraine primarily, along with domestic issues in the United States. So Kim Jong-un, with the backing of his buddies, his authoritarian benefactor, China, and to a lesser extent Russia, he is just launching at an unprecedented pace that we've never seen. 29 missile launch events. Some of those events had multiple launches. Back in June, they launched 8 missiles in one day. Today, 23 missiles at least in a single day. We've never seen North Korea do that before. And they also fired an artillery barrage into the waters off the Korean Peninsula. They were launching missiles from their east coast, from their west coast. And some of the missiles have this irregular trajectory. They're the kind that could possibly turn in mid-flight, making them very difficult, if not impossible, to shoot down as they travel at multiple times the speed of sound. You mentioned it is the first time that North Korea, since the division of the Korean Peninsula, has had a missile land south of their de facto maritime border known as the Northern Limit Line. And the South Korea, with their response, these precision bombing strikes, they fired 3 air-to-surface missiles to the north of that de facto maritime border. So South Korea, they say they're doing this because North Korea continues to provoke, and they say that North Korea is fully responsible for these tensions. North Korea says because of those military drills that the U.S. and South Korea call Vigilant Storm, involving 240 aircraft and thousands of U.S. and South Korean service members, they say it's the United States that's provoking them, that's threatening them, because North Korea calls it a rehearsal for an invasion. And they say that the U.S. could pay a terrible price, and South Korea as well, for attacking the North, and they're promising even more powerful follow-up measures if these military drills continue. So, Akanksha, it could be a very tense period of days on the Korean Peninsula. All
right. Many thanks to you, Will Ripley, for bringing in all those details. And with that, let's now quickly shift our attention over to the U.S. midterm. As midterm election in the United States inches closer, the political campaigns are heading into the final stretch. 3 presidents, one sitting and 2 former, have descended on Pennsylvania for a last lap of midterm push that underscores the high stakes of House and Senate races. Former President Obama is helping Joe Biden through his acid test, while Donald Trump is eyeing for his boost to his 2024 comeback bid. And CNN's Karen Kaifa joining us live from Washington, D.C. with more details. Karen, with a decline in his approval ratings in the past 1 year, will the midterms be a referendum on Joe Biden's 2 years of presidency?
Well, this is not something that's unique to President Joe Biden. This is something that typically happens. This is the first opportunity that Americans nationwide will have to weigh in on Joe Biden, on the Democratic Party, and their policies. And typically, if you look back historically, this has happened to every president, former President Trump, former President Obama, former President Clinton, former President Bush. They have seen losses in Congress in terms of those seats in the midterm elections. People want to make it known how they feel about the party in power. And it is very rare for parties to be able to gain seats in the U.S. Congress when they have the president in power. So this is something that if Democrats lose seats, if they lose control of the House or Senate, it won't be seen as unprecedented. But you're absolutely right. President Biden has struggled with an approval rating. It's both a consequence of a very unusual time in U.S. history when it comes to the economy and other policy issues, but also American sentiment right now. We have a very divided country here in the U.S., and when Americans have an opportunity to make their voices known, especially when it comes to displeasure about the party in power, they're certainly going to take it. So this is something that will be closely watched on Tuesday. We've seen President Biden shy away from some of the races that are seen as right on the fence. He's been very judicious about where he has campaigned on behalf of candidates. And so Democrats know where President Biden stands, and they've been using him perhaps sparingly in some of those states that are hotly contested, and maybe sending out someone with a little more star power for the party right now, former President Barack Obama.
Right. Many thanks to you, Karen Kaifa, for bringing in all those details. We at World 360 will also be keeping a very close watch on the U.S. midterm. Many thanks to you for watching my show. We'll be back same time next week. Till then, bye-bye.